Welcome to Networking RX, a podcast devoted to helping business professionals like you enhance your networking skills in order to become more proficient giving and receiving quality business referrals and improving the overall quality of your life and the lives of those around you. The Networking RX podcast is a production of AmSpirit Business Connections, an organization whose mission is to empower business success through networking.
Welcome back for another episode. This is Frank Agin, founder and president of AmSpirit Business Connections. Thanks to you, those of you who are tuned in the past and those who are tuned in for the first time. Certainly appreciate those who have subscribed as well. Today I have a guest on. For those who are new to the program, you know that, or if you're not new to the program, if you've been on the program, you know that I have a guest on from time to time. A lot of times I will just talk about professional relationships and business networking. But I do like to get guests on to kind of supplement the conversation and give me a break, more or less. But before we get started, I want to remind everyone that we are looking to add quality people to our stable of franchisees. This is a unique franchise opportunity in that it's geared for aspiring entrepreneurs or professionals to add on to what they're already doing. Again, all of our franchisees do something else. For a couple hours in the morning, a few mornings a week, our franchisees operate the AmSpirit Business Connections program. The rest of the time, they are accountants, attorneys, financial advisors, realtors, coaches, and consultants of various kinds. If you're interested or you know someone who's interested, contact me. My email is going to be in the show notes, or you can use the one that we provide at the end of the podcast. Again, we've got a guest with us today. Today I have Jim Moats. I'm going to share a little bit about Jim, and then I'll turn it over to him. During his 45 plus years, he's still going his business career. He served as the CEO and owner of a software company, and then he was the chief executive officer of an international not-for-profit. And I believe those two things tie in together. He can share that a little bit about that with us. And he's had leadership roles in 3 Fortune 500 companies. For the last 20 plus years, he has been a master chair through Vistage International, and that's the largest CEO membership organization in the world. And he has risen to the highest ranks in there. 11 times he's won the Chair Excellence Award. I think that's 11 in a row, if I'm not mistaken. But currently, Jim focuses on helping owners and CEOs shift their management teams to achieve long-term growth, sustainability, greater meaning, and full employee engagement. In addition, he has a book out called Leading from the Edge of the Inside. And I'll turn it over to you, Jim. Thank you for being on.
Oh, thank you so much for the invitation and for that wonderful introduction. I hear that introduction and I realize, gosh, I'm getting old, Frank. It's a long life. It's been a wonderful life as well. So, yeah.
Well, you're young at heart. You're young at heart. You're doing lots. I think a lot of people throttle down at this point in life, and you're kind of doing the opposite. You're well, I shouldn't say the opposite, but you're no signs of slowing down. Let's talk about Jim. Let's talk about the book, your consulting. I mean, it all kind of ties together. Your book's really about leadership, and part of the reason I wanted to get you on is I've always had this theory, and I say theory because I have no empirical study on it, but great leadership and great networking go hand in hand, and in other words, they correlate really well. People who are great leaders also have great networks, and people who have great networks tend to be leaders. And it really comes down to relationships. And when I read your book and start paging through, that's, it's a leadership book, no doubt, but it's also a relationship book. And I don't mean a personal relationship book, but a relationship book. So I don't know what your thoughts are on that. And
yeah. Well, I think that test takes me back to my early years in formation. I served in Vietnam as an intelligence analyst, order of battle specialist, and that was a place that gave me an opportunity to really develop a lot of intellectual rigor. And I worked for a group of people that believed in me and let me work really hard. I took that through business school and then into the corporate world. I was kind of a hard-nosed advocate for, strong strategy and hardcore execution. And people who had the soft skills needed to get off the bus.
Right.
As I moved through life and began to encounter the wonderful opportunities life gives me to confront myself, I began to wake up to the fact that I think it was Thomas Merton said, "No man's an island."
Right.
And I began to realize that, I was accumulating credits in terms of success, and the financial rewards were wonderful. But the lack of meaning in my life was really deteriorating. And that's when I left the corporate world and decided to move over to provide leadership for a small, underfunded international not-for-profit. And that's where I learned the meaning of relationship, because when you lead a not-for-profit, it's all about the heart.
Right.
It's no longer about the head. And so, the idea of leadership that began to form within me, Frank, was really oriented to the fact that, there's three aspects to leadership. Certainly, there's a strategic aspect of leadership. We've got to know why we're going where we're going, right?
Right.
There's the tactical aspect of leadership. How are we going to get there? But then there's the relational aspect of leadership. And what I find, Frank, is that many people who are really good at the strategic are not necessarily good at the tactical or the relational. And many that are good at tactical aren't very good at the strategic. But really, in order to be effective today, the most important part of that is the relational part. Because if you can connect to other people, and I'm talking about connection through the heart, not connection through the head, but if you can connect to other people, then you can go someplace together that's pretty meaningful.
Why do you think that change has taken place? Is it a function of the economy? Is it just where we are in human development, technology?
Well, it's a great question, Frank. I can just tell you, for me, that change began to take place as I experienced clinical depression and realized that I have attached my identity to success, and that would lead me down a very dark road. And so letting go of success, letting go of the need to be successful, began to open me up to the deeper, more durable expression of heartfulness, and starting living out of the sense of relationship, and the relationship with myself, first of all, coming to know myself.
Right.
Not knowing myself in comparison to other people, or not knowing myself in comparison to how successful I was or how much I did or didn't have. I'm talking about knowing myself at a deep, deep level, right? And then beginning to know myself gave me the capacity to start to have compassion for other people, and began to cause me to be curious about other people. And that led me into connection, and that connection's very durable when we come to connection that way. When we come to connection transactionally, Frank, as you know, the level of connection we embrace or we live into it's transactional.
It's fleeting.
It doesn't last very long. Yeah,
right.
It's very fleeting.
Yeah. You drive the car off the lot, metaphorically. When the transaction's over, but it's got to be ongoing. I mean, that's interesting, and it's I tend to look at. I'm not a history major, and I don't know that I want to be, but I tend to look at history. I look at human development, and we lived on farms, and then the Industrial Revolution came along, and they invited us into the cities. They being institutions, corporations, to work. And hey, you don't need to work 365 days a year, 14 hours a day. You can work 8 hours a day, and you have your weekends off or one day off.
Yeah.
And you'll get paid vacation. And, I are we just on a continuum where we're not going to go back, or do we ultimately go back? Is this part of development?
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
I think the economy has a little bit to do with it. I've got kids. My oldest is out in the working world, and I won't say where he's at or what he does. I don't want to rat him out, but he said, I could get another job any day. And I just told him, I said, it wasn't always like that. And it may not always be like that. And you've seen in your lifetime the ups and the downs. And the point I'm getting at is things are kind of flying high now, and employment is having good employees is a must. And trying to hang on to people is a must, but it always wasn't that way. And so we tend to, I think the people who will be successful are the people who will lead with what I think you term heartfulness, even when the economy's down. Because when the economy's down and you don't necessarily need your employees, are you still going to be good to your employees? You may have to let them go. You may have to let some go, but it's a question of how you do it. And I don't know. I just do these things.
It's an interesting conversation because globalization is a phenomena that we've never experienced before.
Right.
And so what that's doing is creating a lot of confusion in all of our institutions. And so I thought there was a relatively significant sea change announcement recently. Are you familiar with the Business Roundtable?
No, I'm not.
Well, the Business Roundtable is a long-standing association of the top 180 CEOs and board chairmen in America, the largest, very largest companies of America. And in 1970, I think it was 1974, Milton Friedman, who was the preeminent economist in America, everyone was listening to him.
Sure.
He sat down with the management team of General Motors, and he said to them very sternly, he says, "You have one purpose to serve, and that is to increase the shareholder value for the shareholders. That's your only purpose." And the Business Roundtable at that particular point in time embraced that purpose wholeheartedly. And we've been living in that world really perpetually ever since. And that whole shareholder value proposition went global. And so the largest companies in the world were serving the purpose of increasing shareholder wealth. On August 19th, we saw something I never thought we'd see happen. The Business Roundtable came out with a new declaration. Again, 180 largest company CEOs and board chairmen. And they said, we are shifting the purpose of a corporation. Purpose of corporation now is to create value for employees, suppliers, the communities they live in, and ultimately, over the long term, shareholders. There's a reason for that. These are pragmatic people. These leaders are, they're not philosophically oriented necessarily. They're pragmatists. And they realize that inequality is it's really killing the capacity of Americans to flourish in this society. And they're realizing that the institutions of America can't deal with this anymore. But the business community can. And that's exciting for me.
It's interesting. We think we have it all figured out, and we don't.
No.
We don't. And the industrialized world is such a small piece of. It's such a splinter in time. If you stop and think,
Right.
even humankind, it's such a small piece, and we think we have it figured out. And this all relates back to relationships, because again, when we attracted people off the farms, our great-grandparents, into the industrialized world, there was this promise of, it was really a promise of transaction, using your terms. Come on in, you get a fixed salary, or you get an hourly rate, rain or shine, paid vacation, health, all those things. And it was very transactional, and that worked to a point to get people off. But now that we're here, it's like, okay, now we need to kind of have these relationships. It's not just enough to pay somebody a lot of money, because quite frankly,
it's such a deficit that during the same period between the 70s, when the shareholder value proposition was embraced largely, through today, what we've seen is that, and Gallup has just been great at this. They do an annual workforce survey, and they've shown that during the same period of time, and it correlates to what you're talking about, that the level of engagement that employees have has dramatically deteriorated to the place where now only 33% of employees are engaged by their work. I correlate that to a lack of meaningfulness. In other words, the meaning of their work has deteriorated.
Right.
And so at the heart of the book is recognizing that, wait a minute, this thing we call a company is, or whether, I led a not-for-profit, we can talk about not-for-profits the same way. These are simply strategies for an owner or for a CEO to create meaning for themselves.
Right.
That's really all they are, right? And so how do we just now recognize that, wake up to that as owners and CEOs, and become really good at creating meaning for everybody in the company? Because that's the source of engagement. So it's like this. It's like this lack of engagement is like a tax on a company.
Oh, yeah.
And if we're only able to create a company that's meaningful for 33% of the company, or for 33% of the employees, then these other 60+% of the people are like a tax. Well, so we shouldn't look at them as a problem to solve. What we should look at is this wonderful opportunity this company has to now set on a path to create meaning for all employees. And so in my book, I'm saying, hey, listen, the purpose of a company is value creation. That's it. Purpose of the company is value creation. And value creation is where we can create meaning for everybody.
Yeah. Well, I guess you're changing the definition of what value. Originally, it was shareholder value. Now you're just saying creating value in a bigger scheme, for everybody.
Definitely, yeah. And the beauty about that, Frank, is that the privately owned company is uniquely positioned. That's why Vistage is such an attractive environment. It's 23,000 members globally now in Vistage CEO groups around the world.
Right.
And so the privately owned company has the capacity to really make these shifts and begin to create meaning. And I believe that is an opportunity to change the tenure, the direction, the trajectory of our society. Right.
I read a book, it's several years ago. It doesn't matter. The book's still out there. It's called The Living Company. It was written by a gentleman who was hired by Shell Oil to do a study. When Shell Oil turned 100 years old, their board was like, okay, where are the other 100-year-old companies? What happened to them? And so they did a whole study on, and basically companies don't survive. The average Fortune 500 company lasts 50 years.
Yeah.
You stop and you look at who is in the Fortune 500, who are the Dow companies, the 30 Dow companies, who were they 25 years ago, and who are they today?
Yeah.
And there's a huge shift.
That's right.
And there's a lot of those companies that aren't, Woolworths. Woolworths, for those who don't know, listening, was a downtown little retail store that you didn't buy groceries there, but you bought you could buy clothes there. You could be, it was kind of a tiny Walmart, but it's gone. Doesn't matter. It's gone. So anyhow.
And there was one of those in every community.
Yeah. Ben Franklin stores, all kind of the same sort of a thing,
Right.
But things are changing, and I think they'll continue to change. It's that's the challenge. That's the challenge, is for us to kind of keep up.
I mean, one thing we know for sure is there really is nothing that is static.
Right. Yeah.
Change is the norm, right? And so And so all of this suffering that we perceive people to be going through, which is anxiety and so on and so forth, that suffering, if we can move towards it, is the catalyst for our transformation.
Right.
And that's the way life works. And so if we begin to look at a company and its leadership team, its management team, beginning to be truthful about who they are and what they're experiencing, then transformation occurs within that management team and the company becomes sustainable. And sustainability is pretty important.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about your book. You talk about different conversations in here. You want to elaborate on these different conversations? I believe there are 9, and you divide them into 4 levels, if I recall.
Yeah. So as I've been on this curious journey about how to create meaning in a company for about 15 years.
Well,
and I realized that
I do want to, not to interrupt, but I do want to interject, is you've had a wonderful learning laboratory being a chair of a Vistage group.
Yeah.
Because you've,
yeah.
I mean, it's not academic research per se, but you've seen this stuff in action. This is just, I'm saying this for our listeners. This is not just something that you concocted while fishing one weekend. This is something that you've seen in action day in and day out, working with these groups, these CEOs. So I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, thanks for bringing that up. That's true. Yeah, that these CEO groups, key executive groups I've had the privilege of working with through Vistage have been learning laboratories.
Yeah.
And I've had the good fortune of having many CEOs who've been willing to be a part of a learning laboratory.
Yeah.
And so, this is not theory. This is the real deal. And so, the 9 conversations in the book came out of a realization that we really need to have a different frame of reference for the way we operate in a business. And the truth of it is if you talk to an 8-year-old kid, you say to him, a CEO, or to say to that 8-year-old child, hey, tell me what you think I do. The 8-year-old kid would say, well, you just talk to people. That's what you do. And the CEO would say, no, I lead a company. And the kid said, well, I don't know. I mean, maybe, yeah, but you really just talk to people.
Right.
And I realized that, hey, listen, we don't have very good structure for the important conversations that need to take place in a company. So I set off on a path of learning what those conversations were, and then developing the framework, and then working with management teams around those conversations, and began to find some amazing results come out of them.
Yeah, the book study, the book is full of case studies, for lack of a better term. I don't want to use the word anecdotal, because these things really happen, where you're turning people around just by changing how they're interacting with the people in their companies.
Yeah. For instance, value creation. Most of the CEOs that I have worked with over the years, when we really get down to the brass tacks, what they want to talk to me about is, how do I grow my company faster?
Right.
I understand that, because I've led companies before. But the bigger question is what kind of value am I creating? Because if the value that I'm creating is potent enough, and the execution on that value is rich enough and innovative enough, I'm going to attract customers. And the problem isn't so much growth as most often the problem is value creation. Is the value I'm creating potent enough to draw customers who have problems into working with me?
Okay, let's talk about you here. Listeners, how can they help you? What are you looking for? I mean, obviously you have a book, and we shared before we hit record that nobody makes money selling books. Your name's Bill Clinton. But you obviously work with Vistage groups. But if you're in the Seattle area, somebody in Portland, Maine wants to pick your brain or work with you, are those things you're open to?
Yeah, it's really, I'm having a lot of fun now because what the book is doing is creating a lot of interesting interactions with people, and I'm developing new friendships, and I enjoy that a lot. But one of the things that I've come to understand is that in order to live out this journey I'm talking about, we need to support each other, and support means we need to learn together. It also means we need to process challenges together, and we need to have people around us who can help us on that journey. And so what I'll be doing is I'll be forming communities of practice, and I'll be, after the first of the year, and perhaps we'll do this through Zoom because of the geographic implications, but I'll be creating a community of practice for advisors, facilitators, coaches, and consultants, and people who generally guide CEOs and management teams. And that community of practice will focus on learning this material, this content, learning how to apply it, and learning how to experience that together. I'll also be forming a community practice for management teams, and it'll essentially achieve the same thing. So that's my focus, because what I want to do is I don't really want to work all that hard, but I want to help others be able to carry this message and carry this work into the world, because I think it can help our world heal.
Okay. What's the best way for somebody to get a hold of you?
Yeah, well, my website is www.jmoats.com, and that's MOATS, www.jmoats.com. They can reach me there by filling out the contact form. My email address is on that as well, as is my phone number.
Okay, so one of those ways they can get a hold of you and get on your distribution.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
Okay. I appreciate your time today. This has been very helpful.
Thank you, Frank. I've enjoyed it and enjoyed our new friendship.
Yeah, likewise. Listeners, again, Jim Moats, the name of his book is Leading from the Edge of the Inside, Embracing the Heart of Business Leadership.
Thanks for joining us on the Networking RX podcast. Please put what you've learned into action today, and let us know if you have questions, comments, or ideas for future topics. You can email them to us at podcast@amspirit.com. That's AMSPIRIT.com. Finally, so you never miss an episode, be sure to subscribe to the Networking RX podcast through iTunes, Overcast, or however you receive your podcasts. Now get out and network with someone.
The Networking RX podcast is the copyright production of AmSpirit Business Connection. All rights reserved.